Good morning, everyone. Kevin here from Skywatcher. Welcome to another episode of the What's Up Webcast. We do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific. We cover everything from what's up in the nighttime sky to equipment to helpful tips and tricks. And of course, at the end of the month, we have a special guest to talk about their specialty in the field of astronomy. Of course, today is the last day of June. I have no idea where the whole month went. I honestly have no idea where the whole year is going, but I think we're all in the same boat there. You guys did see me for a split second before we started. Apparently, it ran off with me, so oh well. If you like what you see, please go ahead and subscribe. Leave a like on the channel. We know a lot of you aren't subscribed, so please go ahead over, the typical YouTube jazz. So, yada, yada, yada. Okay, really quick, just a couple little things. Let me pop this window down. Let me move Vanessa's little bubble over here. I've got too many windows going, and here we go. Boom. If you like what you see and you want to support the channel, you can head over to skywatcher.threadless.com. We have all kinds of funny, cool shirts, all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 blah. Shoes, shirts, we're always adding new stuff, but that goes to supporting the channel, so we definitely appreciate that. And of course, we do have our jumbo shrimp sale going on. We have our green is the new gold sale going on. The wave mounts will hopefully be here soon. And you can still pick up a Virtuoso GTI 127 25th anniversary telescope as well. I think we have inventory of them now as well. So, yeah, you can go to the website right now or your favorite dealer and buy that whenever you like. They do tend to go quickly, so don't wait too long. So, all right, with that being said, we're going to jump right into it, and we're going to bring my good friend Vanessa in here. Hold on, Vanessa. I know you're standing in the wings. I've got a lot of windows open, and let me find where I did with that, and hold on. Trying to figure my life out here really quick. Where did Vanessa disappear to? Because I see...
Right here. I'm right here.
There we go. There we are. Okay. So... this is my good friend Vannessa Gressieux. Some of you might have met her. She's frequent at Grand Canyon Star Party. If you've ever stopped down to the Lemmon Sky Center or the Mirror Lab, and now Kitt Peak, Vanessa is everywhere all at once, it seems like. So, good morning, Vanessa. How are you?
Good morning. I am very well, thank you. I'm sitting here in the headquarters of Mirror Lab in the heart of downtown Tucson right now. How are you?
Good. I am sitting up in Phoenix, so not in downtown Phoenix. So, but yes. So, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure. It's always good to chat with you.
Yes. So Vanessa is like my big sister. We hang out as much as we can, but we both lead busy lives, but astronomy kind of unites us, which I think a lot of us probably feel the same about, when we see friends at star parties and stuff like that. So, Vanessa, as I ask every single person we have on here, when they get started, how did you get started in astronomy? What's your story? So.
I wish I had a story that was something that I hear often where, I had a grandpa or grandma that hiked me up in the middle of the wilderness, 20 miles up a hill with a telescope and sling. But I didn't have that, actually. I found astronomy in kind of a wayward way. And I would, after work, I was a bartender and a server for a really long time. I would go out and I would take my 86 Volvo station wagon out to old Tucson, and I would go to the darkest part of the sky and I would just relax and kind of unwind, and I'd clamber on top of the car and I'd look at the stars and I would ask them what their names were. And while they never actually explicitly told me what their names were, it became fairly obvious that I was interested in finding out on my own. So I didn't go to school right after high school, so I went back to Pima Community College and I took an astronomy class, and it snowballed from there. And so I just recently graduated this past spring, and just even a couple of months ago. And so that's really where I got my start in astronomy, is just looking up and wondering what was all out there and then being brave enough to go and find out. So
That's awesome. I mean, I have heard that story. Others have, but that's what's really cool about some of having people on is there's been a lot of people I've asked that question to, and a lot of them are just kind of like deer in headlights, or it's like I don't know, it's nothing special, but everyone's story is special because
Yeah,
that's
of
what brought
course.
them to where they're at here, and it's not going to be like, well, I went to 14 years of college and got a PhD, and da 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 da.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
there's a lot of people that our stories are not as exciting, and that's okay. My mom got me a little telescope for my ninth birthday on a whim, and that's what started mine. So it's everyone's is unique, and that's the special part about it. So
I love thinking about you as a 9-year-old though and getting that present. Like I wish we could all like just rewind and see your face because it just must have been so precious.
eh, I honestly would have to ask my mom how that was, because at the time it's like I didn't know what astronomy was. It was just like,
Okay.
yay, so cool, and for whatever, it just went off from there. So um anyway, so at that point, you got into astronomy, you started making friends with the stars and starting to figure things out. What led, because you just recently started at Kitt Peak,
I
which
did.
all of you should know what Kitt Peak is. I shouldn't have to say that. Um, we'll get to that part, but there's a couple steps before that, because I met you probably longer than I think we both care to tell at this point. I
I'm proud of it. It's
I
about
don't
8 years
remember.
now. eight
Is
years or
it?
so.
It's
Yeah.
been a while. We met through our mutual friend Alan Strauss, who was on when he was the superintendent of Mount Lemmon. Now he has moved on to bigger projects. But how did you get your start at Mount Lemmon Sky Center? And for those of you who don't know, Mount Lemmon Sky Center it's part of University of Arizona's Steward Observatories, I believe. It's like a
That's right.
section of it. So
No, that's totally right. Well, tracking with my audacious nature, I took a job at, oh, now we're reaching back. We're just going real back.
it's just
I
like the
took a job.
James Webb. We're going back
We're going back.
to
We're
the
not, it's not going to take
future.
as long. Um, I was in my first semester of my of astronomy 101 and I was like, well, I'm just going to see if I can do this. And so I applied at Sky Bar, which is a astronomy themed bar down here in Tucson. And so you wouldn't think that you'd be able to see as much as you could from the heart, I mean, the very, very middle of like light entrenched downtown Tucson, but you can. And so they said yes. And so I suddenly was a first year astronomy student leading astronomy programs at an astronomy themed bar. And I thought to myself, oh, you know what? I should go up Mount Lemmon because it's one of the most prestigious places in town. We're very fortunate to have two amazing research grade facilities here as far as astronomy goes. And I bought tickets and then I ran into a friend who was leading that program from a different life, my friend Rob Bovell, who I knew through Ultimate Frisbee because Tucson's a real small town. And I told him what was going on in my life. We reconnect, and he's like, "You should apply here." And so, okay, first semester astronomy student working at a bar doing that, and then I applied. And Alan, I think he wrote back to me within like 2 hours, and 6 hours later, we were on the phone together doing an interview. And like when I say that it really snowballed, it really just kind of moved quickly. And so now looking back on it, I realize I'm not a fatist, right? I don't know if I completely believe in things being designed, but I do think that once you are on your path, things just suddenly kind of start unlocking and you have to be brave enough to kind of go with it, right? So,
I would
um,
agree with that. There's a lot of things that I've seen, and you probably agree with this because we've kind of had conversations in the past along
sure.
this line where it's kind of like once you start walk like you said, start walking down the path, things start kind of unlocking. But it's like you start walking down the path, and if you're a kind and you're a good team worker and you just work with people, all those things that you wanted, whether you verbally said them or subconsciously said them, unwrap just kind of magically, if you will. I don't know how better way to put it. I don't have a scientific way of putting that. But yeah, things just kind of unfold, and even though they might not unfold in the time that you might want them to, they tend to unfold in the time they need to unfold as your career advances, as you're on this path. And I've noticed, especially recently for me and you after a while, you're like, I don't know what you'd want to call it, but after a while, when enough of those doors just open, it's like, that's really cool and interesting. I don't know if I would call it anything, but it's interesting to see that happen. So
I think that, yeah, I totally see it. I think it's really about being brave enough to kind of state your intention and move towards it and walk towards that line, right? So you have to, I think there's a certain level of bravery there too, because it's easy to get caught up in the details of your life that are holding you back, where you can't see what is actually possible.
And you have to be willing to make that jump. Like, I know you just made the jump to Kitt Peak, and anybody who's made a jump from one probably job that feels safe to something else, it's scary and there's unknowns, and sometimes you have to be willing to take that risk. And I have some friends who have taken the risks and they're doing really well, but at first you're like, I don't know how this is gonna pan out, so we're just gonna cross our fingers and go for it.
Yeah, and I'm a pretty open person. I mean, I think that's why we get along so well. But I adore the Sky Center. I was with the Sky Center for 8 years. It was a really good run. I think we brought in some really wonderful programs. Going through the pandemic and such a supportive environment was very magical and miraculous. And I mean, I know there's so much to unpack in such a short amount of time, but I'm very fortunate and very grateful to have had the great privilege of being there for as long as I was. And I know that the Sky Center will continue to be one of the best communities partners for astronomy here in Tucson. When it comes to that, I'd say that if you were to ask me what my very favorite moment of the Sky Center was, there's too many to count, really, but I would want to talk about Stars Over Sabino a little bit. And so
Stars Over Sabino is kind of Vanessa's baby. I would say it's kind of like a miniaturized version of Grand Canyon Star Party in a way. Even the canyon has been miniaturized a bit. It takes place at Sabino Canyon, which is in Tucson. So if you're ever in Tucson, but it's next year will be its 4th year.
That's right.
But it's a cool event, and it's been really interesting to see. I wasn't able to get down there this year, but I had helped with the first 2. And it started off really good, then the next year was bigger, and then this year was even bigger, and it's cool to just see things snowball. But that's Vanessa's baby, which I want to hand off to you to discuss.
Yes, of course. I mean, Alan had this vision. So Alan, it all comes back to Alan. That's what it's
always Alan's fault. It
always does. He's the pin. So Alan had this vision of creating a star party here in Tucson. Previously, there hadn't really been a substantial one for some time. And so while he was very instrumental in getting it off the ground in the first year, I took it over the second and third year. And we had spectacular guest speakers from the University of Arizona and Lowell Observatory and LPL. And there's just so many folks that would come out. And what I think is particularly unusual for a star party is that typically they're hosted like throughout the country. Organizers are looking for like the new moon. Here, we specialize in doing it during the quarter moon so that we can enjoy the moon for part of it. And then just have our family and our small families, our families with kids come out and feel more comfortable being out in the wilderness of Sabino Canyon to come and enjoy all the telescopes. But this year we had 20, I think our biggest night on Saturday, we had 21 telescopes that evening. So it's very impressive from going from 10 telescopes to 21, even in just such a short duration of time. I can only expect it to grow larger as well. I know that Sabino Canyon is excited about putting in some future plans to help house more astronomy efforts. So I'm looking forward to how that all works out too. So
no, that'll be really cool to see that event, unfold over the future, and Vanessa, like myself, we both do outreach events. She generally runs it under the organization she's with. I have my organization Focus, and both of us, also volunteer for Grand Canyon as well as other events on our own.
Right.
Vanessa can understand how difficult it is to manage events of that caliber and organize something like that. Where when you go out there, it's like, wow, look at all these telescopes. This is awesome. It's like the telescopes, and by the time it gets dark, like that's the easiest part. It's like, great, it all worked. It's like everyone showed up, everyone's doing their thing. It's literally the months and months beforehand to get that event to where it's at. So by the time the telescopes are on site, it's like, yay, I'm going to go to bed now because I can't handle anymore.
Yeah.
But it's like a ton of work. So
it's similar to the day of the wedding. It's like what it will be, and it is what it will be.
Yeah,
but by the end of the night, we're going to be married, or we're going to have astronomy.
Yeah, the bigger the event and the more moving parts, the harder and harder it gets, because you're having to like orchestrate different portions where it's like, okay, we're doing solar at this time over here during the day, and then the speakers are over here. Oh, who's organizing the speakers? What speakers did we get? Okay, the speaker here, and here. These are the times. Right. And generally, like at Grand Canyon, it's like the speakers are basically an event within themselves.
That's right.
And then you have the telescopes and the star party out there. So you have like multiple crews handling multiple segments of whatever the event is. And you've done a really good job at organizing that, but it's a tremendous amount of effort that takes quite a team to back all of that as well. And the nights are long and the days are long. And
I'm glad you brought that up, because without a great team that's motivated, it would be nothing. It's not just a 1-person or 2-person endeavor. You're absolutely right.
Every event requires a team behind it.
I would say at least 35 to 40 key people all involved in making this a success year after year. So absolutely. And speaking of Grand Canyon Star Party this year, talking about being the speaker, I was also a speaker this year.
Yes,
and
you
so
were.
I was wearing many hats at the Grand Canyon this year as well. So I like to do exactly Milky Way photography as well. So I was running a camera, and I'm doing the constellation tours, and I'm helping guide people to different cool things that are happening. And we like to call it massaging the line, right? Where you have a long line of folks, because there's these enormous daubs at the Grand Canyon Star Party, wink, wink. And so they tend to have really long lines. So I would act as a midline kind of entertainment, if you will, or relief, to make sure that folks are staying engaged.
Step right up. Take
exactly.
a look. It gets a little ridiculous at some of the outreach events, though. And I don't know about you, but it always blows me away how I've never really had an issue with people complaining about lines. Like, I know sometimes, like Grand Canyon's probably the biggest one we've done, but even Sabino gets some pretty long lines.
Right.
And people tend to be very patient and understanding. And that's one thing that blows me away about these big events, how the general public, not even talking to them, they're generally very understanding. They're there for a reason, but they're understanding that, hey, there's going to be a little bit of a line to wait in. So
right.
So you did Mount Lemmon, you did Sabino, but you also, and I'm not as clear about this because Mount Lemmon Sky Center a few years ago eventually took over like tours and public portions for the Mirror Lab at University of Arizona as well, and you kind of handled that as well. So
that's true. Yes. So there's a theme here, everyone. I wear lots of hats, so I don't have one on today, but
sometimes a beanie.
Good to put under a hat. That's why. Yes. Yeah. So the Richard F. Caris Mirror Lab was also part of my position, the Stewart Observatory, and we would run public tours and help interpret and help deliver the information that was surrounding the telescope manufacturing, the reason why it's just so novel and interesting, and just the history of it, and then eventually taking people through the facility. And so with COVID, the tours had been on an extensive closure. You have to understand that the folks that work at the Mirror Lab, there are, 42 or 45 folks that they're some of the only people in the world that do what they do, right? So they being in a close proximity to the public was probably not the best choice. So we wanted to make sure that we were really in a safe place to make sure that we could have folks come through the laboratory again. So recently in, I believe it was March 15th of this past year, the tours were given the green light and they resumed tours. So those tours are now back open. And I believe that during the summertime, they're doing them in an early session and then probably resuming afternoon sessions later. But it is fantastic. If you see anything in Tucson, I absolutely insist that you go see their Mirror Lab. It's unlike any other facility in the world. There are other places that manufacture mirrors, but not quite in this way with a spin casting honeycomb mold situation. And certainly these other facilities are not readily accessible to the public, where it's very singular, where you can buy a ticket and go see this amazing process. So it's very humbling. And being inside is the facility itself. It's one of the most gentle yet industrial complexes I've ever been inside of. So it's very like there's lots of like big machines and like you can just you feel the importance in the air when you're in there. And yeah, no, it's very inspiring. So thankfully Kitt Peak has one of the cast honeycomb mirrors. So it's its fourth mirror at the Wind Telescope. So I get to still go visit part of the history of the
There you
mirror
go.
which is it's nice to have an old friend there, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The Mirror Lab is wild to go to. I mean, I know some of you who have been to observatories before, and there's something very cool about stepping inside of a dome, whether it's like in your backyard or like a full observer. There's just something like I'm doing something important because I'm in a dome.
Narnia.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Even if it's like a little 8-foot dome in your backyard and all of you got is like a C8 in there, it's just like, yeah, like I'm
We're
important.
transporting.
Yes. But the Mirror Lab is a whole nother world. It literally is a whole different world in there because they're the largest glass structures on the planet that are made in there. And the LSST mirror that they finished is the largest single glass.
The Simone segment 1 and 3, it's 2 mirrors in one, so 2 for 1, but it is the largest continuous glass structure ever created by humanity. So
and we got to see it right before it shipped out. Is the last time I was in the Mirror Lab. They had the blue coating for transport on it, and it was like, that is a huge piece of glass. And I know as a big Daub owner in my 28, when I take it out and you look at them, it's like, wow, that's a really big mirror. And then you go to see like a professional telescope, you're like, yeah. That's we're not in Kansas anymore, so it's like,
but we could see it from here with this telescope because it's that big. No.
Yes, it's ginormous. But then I was talking to a couple other. It's funny because there was a handful of people who work at the Mirror Lab who come to Grand Canyon and set up their own telescopes. And like Roger Sergioli was up there this year, and the founder, who unfortunately has passed away, Dean Kettleston, was also part of the Mirror Lab crew as well, and they have both brought their stuff up there. And yeah, it's crazy to go in there, and they have so many mirrors stacked in there from what I heard from Roger this year, for the other one that they're making, the GMT down there.
That's right.
And those have 7 8.4 meter mirrors for that one telescope. There's like 4 of those in there. I think 4 or 5 of them are still in the lab there, and he was telling me how they've built this cradle and stuff to like stack them in there. So there's these humongous like multi-ton glass Oreos that are just stacked inside waiting to go to their home at some point. So
that's right. Yeah, they're all bases are loaded there right now, so they're working through. They have some other projects, but I think the Mirror Lab has projects scheduled between now and 2040, so they're not easy to get in with. So if you're looking to have you can't just sit. Yeah, they're only doing research grade mirrors, right? But
yeah, if you got enough money, I'm sure someone at U of A would be like, sure.
Well,
If you don't
you'll
need it
see.
anytime soon, but sure.
Right. Do you need it in 2060? Maybe.
Yes. So,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
but it's cool when you get to go in there and you actually walk in, and the first thing you see once you walk in there, it's very similar if you've ever been to like JPL in the clean room. It's very
Right.
similar. They have like an overlook area into the lab, and you look down and you're like, that's a mirror. Like that's a one telescope mirror, and because everything they've been working with on GMT lately, it's like that is one mirror of 7. And then you really get the idea of how big this telescope is going to be
Yeah.
when they finish it. It's like, that's insane. So,
One thing that I love saying though too, or I did love saying, and I'll continue to say it, it's fine. But there's this part where the mirror is freshly out of the oven, if you will. And so they move it over. And so they're very delicate with these mirrors, obviously, that they're huge. They're very hard to move. We just want to make sure that they don't break because that's a lot of bad luck we don't have room for. But they have a structure where they actually hold it up and they clean the cores out. And so when it's on its side that way, it's the only time it's really in that configuration outside of its outside of its telescope. And they clean those cores out, you really appreciate just how very tall it is because it is on the base floor and it extends right into the 3rd level, right? So it's taller than most buildings in Tucson, Arizona, right? It's
yeah.
3 stories tall. It's 28 and a half, feet tall, in that sense. So it really gives you an appreciation just for the size and scale of this entire telescope. So very excited about seeing that sometime in the future when it exists. But
Yeah, I think the last time we were in there, they had one of the GMTs vertical just because they didn't know where to store it at the time. And we were under it, and you're just looking up. You're like, So
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
gonna need a bigger boat. So
it's a whole Jurassic Park thing. You're like, okay, it's enormous.
Yes.
So.
But if you're ever in Tucson, I know there's a lot of people that watch this. A lot of you are stopping in to see, Kitt Peak, or you're just visiting Tucson. I know a lot of clientele are stopping in to see the Star Arizona crew because they're down there, or Lunt. There's a lot of major players in the telescope world that are down in Tucson. But it's highly worth stopping by, especially now that the tours are open. It's highly worth going down to U of A and taking a look at it. It's pretty easy to find too because it's underneath the football stadium. So it's like, yeah, we got a bunch of nerds underneath the sports thing. So that's how it works. So or if you're ever there to watch a football game, just realize that wherever, I don't know what it's called, the announcer box or whatever it is, not a sports person, that when you're jumping up and down cheering for your favorite team, underneath your feet is millions of dollars of optical glass waiting to go somewhere to explore the universe. So it's wild. So
Very inspiring. And yes, it is it's a very good use of the east side of the stadium. So
yeah. And then like literally across the street is the College of Optics, and they have their own lab that does smaller mirrors where they like open up the parking lot. There's some like gangway doors that it opens up and they drop the mirror glass down in there, and so there's 2 major optical places like feet apart from each other.
Yeah,
so,
it's absolutely, you're right though, it is absolutely Batman's lair over there too. I haven't had the pleasure of exploring over there, but yeah,
I haven't seen that one yet either, but I know when you park over there, you're like, those are big doors. It's like, yeah, that's where you get to the polishing room. And the School of Optics at U of A though is probably one of the most beautiful buildings on the campus though. It's just
right, and they just expanded as well, so it's even more beautiful.
Of course they did, because that's what they do. So it's what your child's money is going towards when you go to U of A. So
that's right.
There you go. So that brings us up to the new venture. Now that you're at Kitt Peak, and if none of you have heard about Kitt Peak, you should probably just leave at this point. No, I'm just kidding.
No, stay and learn. Stay and learn.
Yes. I think Kitt Peak, is still the largest collection of research telescopes on the planet in one spot. I think
it is the National Observatory for a reason. Yes.
Yes. So tell us about Kitt Peak. Now, I know you're new. You've been there for like 3 weeks, but
yes,
since your long tenure there, if you could tell us what's cool about Kitt Peak and I know they've just recently opened from a very
Right?
long COVID closure, which is staffing and it's complex. And Kitt Peak is not as easy for someone to get to as it is for Mount Lemmon. Mount Lemmon's like an hour from downtown Tucson, where I mean, literally from downtown Tucson to like the summit, I think is like an hour and a half. Um, I know friends who just go up there to stargaze and come back home.
Right, right,
But
right, right.
Kitt Peak is a bit more of a trek out into the boonies out there. So
It is on the nation. So it is about an hour and 20 minutes from downtown Tucson. And while I can't really give you a whole lot of information on like the specific telescopes and all of
mm-hmm.
the sizes of the mirrors that are here, in the picture behind me, this is the Mayal 4-meter telescope, which is working with an instrument. It's dedicated to a project where they're mapping the expansion of the universe, and they recently just released not they, we just released it is the most updated map of the ever expanding universe.
That's
And
cool.
so if you just Google that, you can find it, DESI map of universe, and it's stunning and it's absolutely beautiful, and just so many questions have come out of that data. But I think that it's it's like a wonderful project that is under endeavor, and so there are plans to hopefully expand that in the future and continue on with this project. And that's in collaboration with sponsored by the Department of Energy. So they're really looking for dark energy effects on the
Mm-hmm.
expansion. So I hope everybody out there that's my boss listening, I hope I did a good job with that. But my impressions of the facility so far is that it's very much in a state of resurgence and getting back to a place pre-COVID and pre-fire. So there was also a fire that impacted that. So to the best of my knowledge, Kitt Peak was primed and ready to open again to the public. And then a fire took place, I think it was about 2 years ago now, maybe a little bit sooner, which really threatened the facility. And I know as a representative working at Sky Center, going through that as well during 2020, we had a large fire come and threaten the facility as well. We were just as supportive as possible, and making sure that we are, just, hoping and that it was not going to, go any further than it had. So I know that there was a couple of structures that were impacted, but no research telescopes were impacted by that. I think it was some dormitories. So thankfully, Kitt Peak came out on the other side of that. And that's where I am at right now with the program. And so what I specifically do there is I help the docents and guides and help with the programs here. So there is an overnight program, and there are daily programs you can just drive up for. And there are nighttime programs as well. So it's very busy up there, in addition to all of the really wonderful science that's occurring up there as well. So many of these facilities have been up there for many years, and it's just incredible to drive up the mountain. This is my impression, right? So drive up the mountain, and the switchbacks are not bad. And
It
it is
is
on
not
location.
nearly as
So
bad of a drive as Mount Wilson is in
yeah,
LA.
and so it's very gentle in that sense. It is a mountain road, so absolutely, if you're not super uh, certain of your mountain driving abilities, I would have a friend help you. But it is an investment in time, right? Because you're, like you said, it is on the nation, so it is, driving out of town a little bit, but it's not. It's so resting at about 7,000 feet in elevation. It's a little bit less than that. It's not Sonoran Desert anymore. There are no saguaros up there.
Mm-mm.
They're different. It yields a different type of vegetation, so there are taller trees up there. Not quite as tall as Mount Lemmon, but
Yep.
it's different. And so I had the great pleasure of just being able to get a little lost on the facility the other day. I mean, it's not, it's a closed track, so don't worry. I wasn't lost forever. Obviously, I'm here. Um, but just being able to explore a different environment And it happens to be ladybug season right now too. So I feel like these are old friends because Mount Lemmon also has a lot of ladybugs this time of year. Um, but yeah, it's beautiful. And what I really like about Kitt Peak is that you don't have to have reservations during the day to come up. You can just come up, bring a picnic lunch, enjoy the little picnic area that's up there. You know, catch one of the day tours or all of them if you want. We have a solar telescope that's open most days. And just really friendly staff that are happy to just interact. There's also a visitor center where they have some interactive displays that you can learn a little bit more and I don't know. It's like you talked about at the beginning. It was a leap for me, and I coming from a place of complete adoration and love of the Sky Center. It was not an easy decision to leave, but I'm glad that I was brave enough to take this next step because I'm learning so much. I'm learning like the exponential rate of my brain. I don't even know how I fit through the door today. It's incredible, but I think I've rambled on too long now. But it's wonderful. If you ever get a chance, then you have to come up, Kevin. Please come.
Yep, I haven't been up there in a long time, so it is vastly overdue. I did get to do a star party up there once years ago.
Let's
Um,
do it.
yeah, they let like a small group from the Tucson club come up, and they let us do one night all nighter at the picnic tables near the radio telescope,
Oh
and
yeah.
that was crazy. That was the first time I'd ever seen Uranus naked eye. That's how dark and the seeing conditions were up there. We're like, it
You're
should be right about, and then we pointed a telrad and a telescope at it, and it's like, holy crap, that's Uranus, and
Kevin,
we
don't
saw it
lie to
naked
the
eye.
public here. There are a lot
Yeah,
of people on this. Don't lie to them.
no, it was crazy to
No
see it.
way.
It was really cool. And this is when I had my old 16-inch Dob. A buddy brought a 20, and then Dennis from Grand Canyon brought his 28. So it was fun to just go, and there was a bunch of other scopes up there, but it was fun to bounce around with the different aperture Dobs and be like, who can see this and who can see that, and take a look at this. Um, but it was really wild to just be out there, and we're right next to the radio telescope too, so all night you just hear it go, and they're scanning and doing their thing, and it was really kind of neat to just be up there because you could see all the domes open up, and you kind of felt like you were just a part of it, even though it's like we're on a little dinky little telescope in comparison. It's like, wow, we're
Right.
doing stuff too. But you kind of felt like you're riding your bike with training wheels next to like your dad's bike, and it's just like, I'm coming too. That's what it feels like. But yeah, if you're ever out in Tucson or even just Phoenix, Kitt Peak really, it's a day trip. It's about 3.5 hours from Phoenix because you
Or
have
a
to go,
night trip. Depends
or
on
not.
how you are.
I don't know if I'd want to drive that road at night. They actually close it at night, unless you are part of the public.
Unless you have, yes, of
Yeah.
course.
But it's a pretty, the ascent up the mountain is just, it feels like you're on a rocket because you're just driving through the desert. Then you make the left, and then you start driving. You hit the ascent portion of the road, and you hit it quick. You skyrocket from I don't know how long it takes to actually go from base to summit, but 20 minutes, you're maybe less than that. You're at 65, almost 7,000 feet up, and you just literally feel like you're on a rocket as you're going up because you just see the desert get lower and you're getting higher, and you can start to see the horizons and further out, and then you finally get
Yeah.
up top and you're like, we're way up here. So
But
it's
I
pretty
think
wild.
one thing I've really discovered about that area, the summit of Kitt Peak, is that it really is almost a 360-degree view. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're actually in the top of this telescope, they
Yeah.
have an observation deck, which is almost the entire sky. So you can actually walk the entire observation deck and see pretty much the entire area that's surrounding it, including Mexico, more of the nation, back out towards Tucson. And it's just really cool to be up there and see the encroaching monsoons as it is too.
The
You really can see it
monsoons.
you can see it from multiple
Yeah.
directions. So cool.
There's some pictures taken from Kitt Peak during monsoon season, and the monsoons, particularly around, I'm jealous because Phoenix doesn't get them half the time, but Tucson gets some of the most wicked monsoon storms, and
Sure
it's
do.
It's insane to watch the lightning. I can't imagine being up on the mountaintop seeing that. But it's actually a thing, and I think we're almost there. But all the observatories around Tucson actually do their annual shutdown during monsoon season. That's the time that they pull the mirrors out, they recoat, they do servicing on, because it's like, well, the weather's all over the place, we can't do anything. So it kind of is nice for them to have this like full, like, we know we tear down at this time and work on everything, and that's what they do. So
so fun fact though, Kitt Peak is not closing.
No,
we are not going into monsoon shutdown, at least for the tours. So the tours, daytime tours will continue. The nighttime tours will continue as long as the monsoons let us. And we'll certainly be hosting overnight programs too, where I think the chances of hosting an overnight tour and kind of like hanging out and waiting and seeing if the skies clear up, because that's what it works out to be, right? We have the insanity of monsoons built up during the convection of the day. We have that release valve that's hit by those giant rolling storms, like you mentioned. And then I'd say that typically, though, by 8 or 9 o'clock, there's a really good chance for the sky to be completely, devoid of all of those, like that high particulate. It could still be a little bit swampy, a little bit humid, right? So it's a little bit of disturbance in the seeing, but overall, really, those storms act like a dragnet for all that high altitude particulate.
Some of the best seeing conditions out here in the desert are when the storms leave. I've had the 7-inch refractor that you've used at Grand Canyon that we brought up, the stellar view. There was a storm. We did an event late last year somewhere. And the seeing conditions for planets were insane after the storm. We had it like 800 power on Saturn. It was ridiculous. But that's how it works with those storms. They're, like you said, they're like a dragnet. They just get everything out of the sky, and then it just looks like pristine. So
I have yet to night there yet, but I'm looking very much forward to doing that. So I'll let you guys all know how it goes.
Back to our field correspondent Vanessa, live from
here. I'm reporting live from Kitt Peak. Okay, that's just the preview. Everybody, don't get too excited. It's Friday.
But you guys do have, I think there's 2 telescopes up there for the night observing. There's the 20-inch that's at the visitor center. Then I think there's a 16 that's still in another observatory.
Yeah, the roll-off roof. We call it the roar.
The roar.
The roar. I know, exactly.
And then there's the solar one, which I have never been in the solar dome. It's never been opened when I was there. I've been in McMath Pierce, which is the big solar scope up there. I know that's not research operational anymore, but and then occasionally in the past they've actually opened the 0.9 meter WIN to public viewing on very rare occasions, which our friends Jim and Vicky have gotten to view through, but I have not done it yet. So and I've also heard of people actually looking through the 90-inch, the one right next to the Mayall. I've heard they've opened that up on very rare nights. They'll do special viewing through that.
We'll see what we can do for you, Mr. Legore. We'll see what we can do for you.
Big glass.
Yes, I like big glass. Yeah, so.
Yes, and we cannot lie.
We just can't.
So other than the professional stuff, when you're at home, I know you have your own telescopes too. Do you like going out and viewing, or do you find that, the day and work kind of zaps it out of you to where you don't get out and observe much?
I'm a maniac. So a big part of my life is helping encourage people to look up. Truly. I know it's so contentious, possibly, right? But I really want people to get out and just look up. I don't ever mind when people ask me questions that, are seemingly a little obvious, but I would rather them be curious about what's happening. For instance, like we're at Grand Canyon, and then suddenly I always have eyes on the sky. Like I am always scanning for shooting stars. And I have this really weird, funny thing where I can't help but yell out loud to the point where people think I've gotten hurt, because I'm like, ah!
You do know it's like, Vanessa.
It's a star. So. Yeah, you can hear me like across the parking lot, and they're like, it's a shooting star. It's fine. Just put some tussin on it. She's okay. And so yes, I am continually out in my yard. I actually just got a really nice Skywatcher Go-To Dob, which I have not put together because the day that I received it was the first major monsoon in Tucson.
Of
So
course, that's what happens when you get a
without
new
fail,
scope. It's like, oh, a box, then clouds are just like, smacking
exactly. They're
you.
like just smacking you in the face. They're like,
Yes.
no, no. So I look forward to having a little bit more stable skies, doing that in my backyard. And so I'm very fortunate to live in a dark sky area in Tucson. Um, so I can go out to my backyard, and it's all very self-designed. Everyone, don't worry, I didn't look into that. But it was important to me to be able to just go out in my backyard and see Milky Way if possible, because that's one of the most brilliant, beautiful things about being here in this area is that we're very fortunate to be able to see Milky Way pretty much if you're in even a slightly darker area. No, so I'm continually out there. If you ask me what was in my backpack right now, I have my headlamp, I have a hat, I have a pair of gloves, and I have, of course, binoculars and my laser pointer, because you
Mm-hmm.
just never know. You never know. And so, in that vein, if I can really quick, I'll just touch upon the fact that if in case anybody was wondering if I ever sleep, no, I don't. Um, I'm up early, I go to bed late, and then we're just having a lot of fun over here. But I also help represent the solar system ambassadors with NASA and JPL. So on top of everything else that I help represent, I also am helping vulnerable populations and making sure that we're getting out to rural areas and getting science and astronomy and different projects that NASA has put on in front of folks that otherwise wouldn't have access. So I'm very motivated to make sure that I always have a laser pointer on me, because you just never know who you're going to be able to have look up.
Yep.
So yeah.
Here's a question for you. I'll be curious to see what your thoughts are on it. How long before we discover life on another planet?
Well, we discovered this because we're in it, right?
Yes.
Um, so do you want a uh, I don't know if we ever significantly will, and not because it doesn't exist, but because really we are very tiny. We are, the way that I can best describe it, if anybody remembers, like what is it? Not Gilligan, it's Gulliver's Travels.
Oh,
What is
Gulliver's Travels. Yes.
Yeah. And so you know how like there's the Lilliputian and he comes into contact with these tiny people and they like tie him up. We're not the Lilliputian in this equation. We are the microbes of bacteria on the clothing of the Lilliputian. We are very small in comparison to most stars that we've seen out there. And the ability for life to have developed in this timeline, if we're just extrapolating and putting our timeline on other stars, really the frequency of life being out there is, the chances of it are pretty great. However, there's just such an expansive distances between us and other stars. I mean, for heaven's sake, our closest neighbor is what, 4.3 light years away. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of time for us to travel at our current speed. So even just being able to communicate with them, if we were able to figure that out, our distance is our savior in the same breath, though. So our loneliness and our distance are the reasons why life have been allowed to rise up here. So we are not really close to any stellar neighbors to snuff us out, like possible gamma radiation or other like supernovae like phenomena. The ability for us to even have developed in this short amount of time is pretty incredible. So how long before we do? I think if I were just guessing here, which I am obviously, it's more likely that another civilization, if they ever get the gumption to come to this tiny little rocky planet around a very minor star, they will find evidence of us if we're lucky. Or they're going to wind up picking up our probes that have left our solar system. So I think if we wanted to leave a lasting impression here, I would highly encourage us to leave time capsules in space. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we'll ever have a meaningful relationship with another like extraterrestrial being, but it is very good for movies and for hope. So It's definitely out there. It's just unfortunate and fortunate that we are so lonely here.
No, it's a very interesting question that, you know, the more you crunch on it, the harder it is to answer too. Like there's just not a good answer to it, and everyone's interpretation of it's going to be different. So,
Right, right. What do
uh,
you think, Kevin? I don't know.
I'm kind of right there with you. I feel like, you know, we can throw our nets out into the universe and stuff, but you know, it's kind of like exploring the ocean too. Where, you know, it's like, oh, we're trying to find this one sunken ship in this vast ocean, and then you multiply that by infinity, and it's just the odds are very slim at that point. I love the movie Contact, and I like the kind of hope that it puts and instills in people. I think what I like about that question isn't so much of, you know, it goes back to Contact as well, where, and I wish people would really get this through their head, especially in the climate that we're in with everything in the world, is when you realize how far and how vast everything is, like, you're not actually alone, because you have to look back that we're all here on this rock together. And
Right.
that maybe instead of fighting and arguing about trivial things, we could strive to do bigger things that are more positive. And that's, I know people have their opinions on Elon and stuff, with SpaceX and things like that, and no one's perfect by any means. But what I have to give to the guy is that at least he's striving for something bigger. At least he's aiming for something deeper and has meaning towards it. And it's not just like, how can I use this to destroy somebody else? It's like, no, okay, if you're going to tell me no and I can't do this because it's not this, I'll just get my own money and I'll do it myself. And, but it takes a couple people like that to be like, hey, why don't we just try to do it differently? Why do we have to do it this way? So I think there's little glimmers in it, but yeah, I think we'd be very, very lucky if we got anything remotely close to finding life on another planet at this point. And if it is, it's like a microbe or something like that. And we'll name him Bill, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah. No, and then
Yeah.
I, when you think about that, I think observationally, I think there's a very good chance that we'll see some things.
Especially with
Hopefully.
the Europa mission coming up. So
Yeah, yeah. And
I think
so
that's the hard part, is when you talk to the general public, it's like, well, when will we find life? It's like, well, there's a spectrum of that. Are we talking about intelligent life, or are we just talking about life? So
right.
they're two
Evidence of
very
life.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, but then,
Uh,
it depends on how far away it is, because in that case, right, is if you're looking at an object, then you're looking at a star that's 2,000 light years away. We're looking at that star
mm,
as it was. We're getting that all of that data is coming back to us as it was 2,000 years ago. Who knows what's happening now? And even I forget which star it was. Uh, I just, yeah, it's not that important, but I just remember somebody saying at Grand Canyon in passing, that star over there, if somebody was looking at us, then they would be able to, if had really great fine-tuned instrumentation, they'd see the dinosaurs. And I was like,
mm,
whoa, that's cool. So
yeah.
I still get blown away. That's why I love astronomy. I still get blown away by all of it. And that's
Yeah.
why I chose this path in that sense, where I was like, I don't want a life where I know everything. I want to continually be curious. I want to continually seek things out and discover new life, new
Yes.
civilizations, and just okay, we're getting crazy. But but that's really my main motivator to do this, is to help inspire other people to be just as curious. So
That's a good one. I got like 5 minutes left. There's a question here. Any thoughts on John? I've never heard about this. Any thoughts on John Dobson's idea once to take a giant Dobsonian out on a boat and show island communities?
island communities being like,
Like out in the Pacific and stuff like that, I guess. I'm not sure. Uh, basically doing outreach with a big Dobsonian, but going out to these small islands across the world and sharing the night sky with people.
if he's invited.
Yes.
I think that would be, sorry. I
Some of
think,
the
I mean,
communities might not want you there. And
yeah,
other communities, they have their own folklore of the night times. That's what I think would be more interesting, is to actually go to different,
right.
like the Hawaiian Islands or the South Pacific, and be like, I want to know your culture's perspective of the sky. Tell me what that is. Tell me what
Yeah.
that is. So,
I love, and so for anybody out there, I would say absolutely look at the Aboriginal cultural storytelling of the nighttime sky, especially around centered around the Red Rock in Australia. Fascinating and
oh, Ayers
so
Rock. So,
so different and so very different from like Greco-Roman like folklore in that sense. And it's just it's one continuous like surface, right? So the sky and the earth are one continuous medium. And so depending on the seasons, the stories change, but it's like such a beautiful interpretation of their sense of place in the world. And really developed so much meaning and so much ability to just pass those on generation and generation. So they're some of the most there's a beautiful book called Dark Sparklers. So for anybody out there who's really bored and wants a new book, it's fabulous. So please go check that out. But I learned a lot. And it was this researcher who went out to this different group out there and previously had never really spoken to somebody outside of their ancestry about their stories, and really bestowed a lot of trust in this person to help deliver their story. So yeah, like you said, Kevin, it's just I think that, yeah, if you were invited to go, then yes, absolutely. But there's a certain, I think we would learn a lot more from those
yes.
communities than necessarily like us being like, here's this thing. And it's like, okay, yeah.
No,
So
I agree. This is a bigger one, and we only have like 2 minutes left, so we'll try to keep
sure.
it short. What are your I don't even know how to pronounce this. What are your thoughts about Project Hephathadios on Dyson spheres? I know there's been a lot of talk about Dyson spheres lately. I don't know enough about it to even elaborate that question further. So,
Well, I just saw a headline. So the only thing, I don't really have a lot of experience, or I've never heard that word before either. So I know a lot of things, but I've not heard that word before. I'm sorry. But
go
Dyson sphere,
discover something new this
I know, I
weekend.
was thinking about how we would be able to apply that here. I mean, does that mean like those civilizations like harness all the materials from every planet in their solar system to then build? Because I couldn't imagine extracting enough material from the Earth alone to build that Dyson sphere even around our sun. So, I mean, could we get away with a partial? I mean, I think it's interesting, but like I said, I don't have enough knowledge or background on a Dyson sphere, but in theory it seems reasonable if you're able to pull that off, but I wouldn't even begin to understand where you would get enough material for that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
we need to
Oh,
overcome some other obstacles before we can have that
yeah,
conversation.
yeah, yeah. So,
um, yeah, that was an hour, so we just blew
let's just
through
keep
an hour.
going. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding. No.
I know there are some people here that want you to come back, especially if once you've, sat through Kitt Peak a
Oh,
little bit longer
I'd
and
be
you've
happy
got
to.
more to share on that. So we'll definitely, maybe in like a year or so, we'll bring you back around and pop you back in the lineup. But very, thank you very much for spending your morning with us. So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, if you guys want to see Vanessa, you could go to Kitt Peak and see her. She might be floating on the mountain. She's probably down in Tucson at the office, but occasionally you rub the lamp, she'll pop up on the mountain occasionally. So,
Yeah.
other than that, that's it for this week, guys. Again, subscribe, leave a like on a video. If you want some cool swag, head over to skywatcher.threadless.com, pick up some cool stuff there. And we've got a multitude of sales going on at the moment, too, if you need a new Skywatcher piece of gear, clouds included.
Hey.
But other than that, thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great weekend, clear skies. Stay cool out there, and thanks very much, Vanessa.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, see you guys. Bye.